Welcome to the Scoop World Order. It is Sunday, and we are ready to rock. We are getting close to training camp. The guys are coming off a 10-day break, and we're going to break down what some of the buzzes that we've heard from our NFL contacts. So we're going to get into Marvin Harrison, Donovan Jackson, JT Tuimoloau, some of these guys that are trying to get into the league. Where are they at amongst the minds of general managers and scouts that we've talked to over the last couple of weeks? Now it's a great time to get info from those people because they're on vacation and they're they have some booze and they're also texting. So it's always fun to text with these guys. So we're going to get into that. But first, as always, we're very grateful and thankful for you guys. Thank you guys for showing up today. Bring those questions in to our chat. We're going to break down Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyle McCord's chemistry. Talk a little bit about where he stands in the pantheon of Ohio State players and wide receivers. And a whole lot more. This is going to be a great show. Really excited about it. We've been brainstorming it. So good. Take it away with my man at Nevada. Nevada, how are you doing today?
Good. Just starting on a sad note, the news just broke on Twitter here in the last little bit about the untimely passing of Carnell Tate's mom. Don't have the details, but, sounded like a homicide in Chicago. And I know Carnell's headed back home, and just a terrible, terrible story. So our heart's broken for Carnell, from the entire Ohio State family, and didn't want to go through this. I know we're light and we like to joke around and have a lot of fun, but the human side of this stuff is really, you have to remember that these aren't robots, and these are not like just names on an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation or something with stats. These are real human beings with lives. And I know that Carnell went to IMG, and part of the reason he went to IMG was to kind of escape some of the violence that's kind of plagued Chicago. And to hear that his mom is fallen, that's just, like I said, just a heartbreaking story, and our heart goes out to everybody involved, and prayers to Carnell and his family, because that's just an awful way to start. But reminds everybody to hug your loved ones and enjoy every single day, because nothing's taken for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Carnell is one of the greatest kids. His mom, Ashley, was a great lady that I got to talk to a couple times, and it just breaks my heart. I mean, this is the second year in a row, and Joe Rory lost his mom, Mickey, to cancer last year. That was heartbreaking. Carnell is going through the same trauma and pain, and he's heading to Chicago to make arrangements. I mean, it's hard. He's got he's got a sibling, so it's hard. I mean, it's one of those things. It's you never want to obviously get that call, but it's horrible. And Carnell's such a great kid, such a nice kid. Kid's got such an incredible future ahead of him, and I just hope that he can find comfort somehow, because it's not easy. It's tough. He's a kid that tore it up in the spring, did everything the right way. First guy to lose his black stripe in the class. High GPA, a guy that me and you project could be the number 3 receiver this year. Obviously, everyone, Julian Fleming, but production-wise, I think Cardell's much more talented than Julian is. So heartbreaking. But with the receivers, it's tough. But we're going to talk a little bit about where the team goes from here. Obviously, they're finishing up conditioning. They had about a 7 to 10 days off recently. Now they're in summer 2, which is real heavy conditioning, a lot of running, get them ready to go. The team has a barbecue coming up at the end of July, which is a recruiting event. Unofficial visitors for all of the country should be flying into that. We used to have Friday Night Lights, but they've dropped that. That was a really fun thing we did the first year with Urban. I think it got stale after 3 or 4 years and less star power, but the first year was unbelievable star power. And then we're into training camp. So we're kind of about 2 weeks out from training camp starting. So we're going to be getting cranked up. Nevada, what do you look for the next 2 weeks with the conditioning, with the recruiting, before Ohio State takes the field for camp? Like, what kind of things have you been hearing? There's a lot of buzz around Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison. A lot of buzz around Devin Brown. I love Devin Brown. I've talked to Devin Brown. He's a big dude, strong, exceptionally quick. I know the offensive line guys love blocking for Devin Brown, which counts for something. But what have you been hearing, and what are you looking forward to as camp gets rolling?
Well, I always like this time of year because I remember a couple of years ago when Marvin Harrison Jr. first hit campus and he'd come in with the freshmen and they'd done the strength and conditioning. And I want to get the number right, but it was something like he did something like 15 reps of 225. Um, and for those of you who don't have some perspective on that, as a wide receiver, I mean, those are NFL strength wide receiver numbers right there. And that was from an incoming freshman. And that immediately caught my attention. I was like, wow. I mean, that's something else. And, the what I think would be fun would be to go back and look at Marvin's high school tape, which so we can see a little bit of that McCord Harrison chemistry, but also look at Marvin was a 4-star. I think top 15 wide receiver in the country, but not super like it wasn't like he was like everybody was excited. In fact, a lot of people weren't excited about him coming to Ohio State, and it'd be fun to kind of look at that because there's talk amongst NFL guys, the NFL guys that I talk to on a regular basis, the agents that I talk to on a regular basis, that Marvin Harrison is a top 5 NFL pick next year and a guy that they're putting in, I mean, like a Calvin Johnson. I mean, a generational type of wide receiver in the NFL. And we're going to get to see him for one more year at Ohio State. And I'd like to kind of review the journey to see how he was in high school 3 years ago and where he is now because he is something special. Enjoy every single game that he plays here at Ohio State because we're going to be talking about him for quite some time and watch him in the NFL for quite some time. So I think this would be fun and enlightening.
Excuse me. I apologize for that. There are actually three wide receivers that are ahead of Marvin Harrison from the 2021 recruiting rankings. Um, this would actually be a great trivia question because it's difficult to get. Um, the number one receiver in the country that year was Emeka. Number four was Jaden Ballard. And then the one that no one will get off rip is number 18 was Lorenzo Sales Jr. was rated ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out of high school. So I but yeah, I think that the thing about Marvin is he really has no ceiling as to what he can do. I mean, he's a guy that he's all ball. He never took an NIL deal until this year. He finally decided I might as well have a nice car for my last time and make a little bit of money. But he didn't want to. His dad didn't want to have any NIL deals. He didn't want to be. It was all ball. But now that it's he's got what's weird is when you get down into September, you got like 4 months left as a Buckeye, and so might as well get a nice car, might as well get a little bit of money so you can get. And they don't need money. I mean, Marvin Harrison Sr. made a ton of money in the NFL, but I think that this chemistry you see McCord. There's a couple quarterbacks in here. McCord is 6. If you guys are watching the film right now, but that chemistry is going to be something to watch, and I think that as these quarterbacks rotate and Devin Brown gets reps, what kind of chemistry does he have with Marvin? Marvin's the kind of guy that like you don't really, these guys are all going to be tight, but I mean Marvin gets so open that if you can throw the ball all the way Devin Brown can and Kyle McCoy, then you're going to be straight. Um, Nevada, are you shocked that he was 21st in the country? I mean, I knew that he was kind of lowly rated. I know Bill Greene thought he couldn't play at all. Um, what were your thoughts when I said that he was the fourth highest rated receiver in on Ohio State's roster from that class?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know there were questions about his speed coming out of high school, but he looks plenty he looks plenty fast to those highlights, and he's always had that great range and that catch radius, terrific hands, and you know that he had the NFL lineage. But it just shows you, the imperfect nature of trying to project, high school players onto college and obviously onto the next level. You just never know, and so you're never sure who's going to be the next great one. But it is kind of funny where there are people that really believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. has a chance to leave Ohio State as the greatest wide receiver to ever have played at Ohio State, and you know, when you think about that, that's just when you think about all the great wide. We could do an entire show just naming wide receivers here for the next 30 minutes, and to think that Marvin is going to be in the pantheon of those, and maybe at the very, very tip top, is just crazy to think about. But he announced his intention to be great from the moment he set foot on campus, and as you said, he's been solely focused on doing his thing, and it's been uber productive. Um, I remember in the Rose Bowl when we were asking for bold predictions, and I predicted Marvin to catch 3 touchdown passes in the Rose Bowl, and sure enough, he caught 3 touchdown passes in the Rose Bowl. So he he's been productive whenever he's been given the opportunity to do so, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do this year because whether it's Brown or whether it's McCord, he's going to put up some gaudy numbers because you really just can't guard the guy.
Yeah. Do you think that some of his, I guess, limelight? Obviously, he's an A-lister in college football. He's probably one of the maybe the most well-known player in college football other than Caleb Williams. Do you think some of that luster or limelight hasn't been as bright just because coming into last year it was all about Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the year before you had Garrett and you had Chris Olave, you've had C.J. Stroud. I think that it helps him that he's not the main focal point of everything, but this year he is. How do you think he'll respond to that? Not being because like last year, obviously, C.J. Stroud was the Heisman, front runner, top 2 or 3 betting favorite. This year, Marvin's that guy. Do you think there will be any hindrance to his game with this Nevada?
Well, no, but I think, look, I thought you bring up an excellent point because you think about a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. hits the campus at any other college in America, and he's playing as a freshman. At Ohio State, he doesn't see the field. Didn't see the field until Olave and Wilson sat out the Rose Bowl. He got a chance, and also he scores 3 touchdowns. And like you said, then his second year, Marvin Harrison Jr. Wow, he's got to be just like the star of the team. No, he's not even. Again, Jackson Smith and Jigba is the focal point, and then you've got a Mecca, who's another guy. And now it's almost like a Mecca's kind of the not the afterthought, but a guy who's a little bit in the shadows. Hasn't really had a chance to be the guy the freshman year for all the same reasons Marvin did. Same thing last year with Marvin and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So now you've got a Mecca who's a first round NFL draft choice. But certainly playing in the shadows of a Marvin Harrison. But no, I don't think it'll affect Marvin. I think the biggest thing is just going to be we need to have a quarterback that can get him the ball, and I think Ohio State knows that. With Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator, they're certainly not going to lack for trying to put him in good situations to kind of get it to him. And the good news is when you have other wide receivers out there like Emeka, like Julian Fleming, like Carnell Tate, et cetera, such like Brandon Inniss, that you're not going to be able to just roll and double up Marvin Harrison every time. And that's the great thing. He's not playing an offense where he's the only guy. And that's the beauty of recruiting all these great wide receivers is, where your big part of your pitch is come to Ohio State, you won't get doubled because they can't double you because if they double you, that means they can at least somebody else in single coverage and they're not going to be able to do that. So you're going to get your catches and get your touches. And so I think Marvin's poised for a big year. I think he'll have a big year, and I can't wait.
How much of when you evaluate when they say the greatest receiver in Ohio State history, is that purely based on his time at Ohio State, or is it the totality of his football career? Because that's something I struggle with when someone says he's the best to ever do it, and then, but I'm like, well, what did he do in the league? Because that matters to me. I think because like to me, Chris Carter's the guy right now. Hall of Famer, all those records, but obviously he had the issue at the end of his career at Ohio State. Do you weigh it at all? Is it more slanted to what they did at Ohio State? Is it to the league? Because in the NFL, you can play 15 years. In college, these guys play 3 at Ohio State. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, to me, when I'm talking about those types of conversations, I'd say it's certainly weighted towards performance in college, but not solely towards that. So you're certainly evaluating college heavily, NFL heavily, but then when I'm talking about the greatest of all time, I'm talking about somebody who's got a physical presence and a dominance that kind of makes him stand out as kind of a man against boys, and that's where when you talk about like a Terrell Pryor, that type of physical just superiority, and I think Marvin Harrison's one of those guys that has that because and when you see him, he's just a massive dude. I mean, his catch radius is just absurd. His hands are huge. He catches everything thrown to him. He's strong. I mean, he's like I said, he's got NFL wide receiver strength the day he set foot on the campus, and he's got a NFL Hall of Fame pedigree on top of that. So if you're looking for a guy that checks all the boxes in terms of what are the characteristics of somebody who would be in the greatest of all time conversation, Marvin Harrison Jr. is definitely a guy that should absolutely be in that conversation and will absolutely be in that conversation by the end of the 2023 season.
Yeah. So, and this kind of ties into something I was going to bring up. Congrats to Nick Mangold and Malcolm Jenkins. They're both going into the Ohio State Athletic Hall of Fame, which is awesome. I was texting with Nick the other day. I feel like that process, it's interesting. I feel like that they weigh it more towards the professional career, which is completely fine. Nick, obviously was a guy that, for whatever reason, didn't get anywhere near the amount of credit and love that he deserved on the award circuit. He never made All Big Ten. He was second team All Big Ten because Minnesota had a guy named Greg Esslinger who was like 3-time All Big Ten, won the Remington. Then he was like a 6th-round pick. And then there's Nick, who's awesome, much better player, much better pro, 1st-round pick, lifetime New York Jet. And it was always one of those weird things where Nick was just a dominating player, but the media, generally, and I'm not trying to degrade the media, but they have no idea how to evaluate offensive linemen other than what they're told or what they hear. So a lot of guys that make preseason All-American, they make postseason All-American, unless they just stink it up in a game and the whole world sees it. But Esslinger had all this hype. He was at Minnesota. They had that crazy running game with Lawrence Maroney, Marion Barber, that 2-headed monster that they used to have. And Maroney shredded us in 05 up there in Minnesota. And so it was like Esslinger kind of rode that wave to winning the Remington and winning All-American. But Nick obviously was a much better player. It was a 1st-round pick versus Greg Esslinger being a 6th-round pick. But Nick is in the Hall of Fame despite never making All Big Ten. But he had a fantastic multiple-time Pro Bowl career. But yeah, that's what I always.
No, but I got a question, and maybe this is a question for all the viewers out there because I don't have access to the internet right now because I'm on the phone doing this thing. But when I was walking through the Buckeye Grove, and I was just there recently for a hockey camp, I saw a Nick Mangold tree. I'm pretty sure I saw a Nick Mangold tree.
Oh yeah,
and I don't remember him making All-American now, and maybe I'm wrong. So maybe, like I said, I'm putting it out there to people. Like, can somebody check the thing? Did he make an All-American team? And if he didn't, how does he have a tree in the Grove? But that one was confusing because, like, I remembered the All-American because I just always remember thinking, boy, he'd been underappreciated in college. He hadn't received the type of recognition. And then I was walking through it and I saw the tree and I'm like, man, I don't remember him being part of an All-American team. But again, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe one of our great listeners can correct me on that one.
I honestly, I know for a fact he never made an All-American team just because I was there. I mean, he was my center. I was, you don't get like overly angry about it because you can't do anything about it when you're an active player. But it's just like I thought it was a tragedy. I remember Nick was bummed out that he didn't make All-American because everybody wants to get a tree. Like a tree is like the ultimate. When you're an individual football player at Ohio State, everybody wants to get a tree. Obviously, you want to get the national championship, but that's a team thing. The best thing you can do individually is get a tree. And he was really bummed out he didn't get a tree, even though he was 1st-round pick and all that other stuff. And I felt terrible. And I remember the one day I was taking some people to the spring game, so I walked over to Buckeye Grove to show him my tree, and I was walking past, and I showed him, and I was like, Nick Mangold 2005, and I took a photo of it and I texted it to him and I was like, hey, did you know you had a Buckeye tree? And he's like, no, I swear to God. He said, no, I had no idea. No one ever told me. And I was like, I swear to God, this is a real thing. He had no idea. This was like last year. And I don't think, I think that's been added recently because I would have noticed that because I was in '07 and he was in '05, so our trees are like kind of close because they do it in chronological order. And like Nick had no idea that he had a Buckeye tree, and I was like, dude, like, hey, you got a tree, and again, he wasn't an All American because if you're an All American, the first thing you want to know is when they plant in the tree so I can come see it. So they already have Paris Johnson's tree in the ground, and they've gotten a lot quicker with it because with me it was like it took like a year for my tree to get put in the ground, and I was like waiting for it.
But wait a second. Do they do a ceremony or something like? Do you come
No,
there and plant the tree or something like that?
they don't do anything. Like it just goes in the ground one day, and like back in the day, like in '08 after I got drafted, and I was living here. I would just kind of randomly every like 2-3 months drive over and see if it was in, and it wasn't because it is exciting. Like it's really exciting to get a tree in Buckeye Grove, and like it's like one of the coolest things ever. And Nick had no idea.
Oh wow.
Yeah. See,
that's a crazy story.
Troy Brewer is on there saying 2005 first team All American, but I don't think he was. I mean, unless it was some different team or some team that, like again, it wasn't because back in and again, maybe it was some ancillary team, but back in the day, and they've loosened this, which I don't know how I feel about that. You had to make one of the big four. You had to make Walter Camp. You had to make the AP team, the media team, and the coaches team. That was it. You couldn't make the on3.com All-American team or the ES.
The Kid Choice Award All-American slime team.
Yeah, because like there was like $800. It was like we could have the Buckeye Scoop All-American team first team.
Right,
I mean,
sure.
Like DeJuan Jones made the CBS.com All-American first team. So back in the old days, that would have qualified, but now I think it might. But like for me, I made the ESPN first team All-American and I made the coaches first team All-American. Now, if I just made ESPN back in the day, I wouldn't have gotten a tree. But the coaches one was the one that triggered that I got a tree. So I mean, again, it's stupid, but there has to be a cutoff just because it got to be silly. There's so many All-American teams and the buy.com All-American team or whatever. But yeah, Nick had no idea that he had a tree. And again, I'd love to know what All-American team he made in '05. Because again, I love Nick and I thought it was a crime it was an All-American because he was really bummed out because he didn't get a tree. And then he has a tree. So, but yeah, it just was, it was just interesting because like everybody wants to get those trees, but I mean,
no, I'm just fascinated that they don't like I always have had in my mind that when you got a tree that you're there with like a little shovel and you're like digging the hole and they put the tree in and then your loved ones are around and everybody starts crying and you put stuff in and then you throw some mulch and you bring your dog over there and the dog whizzes on the tree and they do, what I'm saying? Like it all happens. But like you're telling me that just there's no ceremony at all, nothing.
Nothing. Swear. I mean, I swear, like, because I think online somewhere it says that that's how it is. Like, they do a small ceremony before the spring game, but there was like nothing. Like, I literally had no idea. and I think it took like a year or two before my tree got planted. And it wasn't just mine. It was like all of the like the '06 and '07s. Like, they all got '08s. Like, it took a while. So,
wow.
I don't know. It was, you'd think they'd make a bigger deal of it and they do like a video of it. Cause I think it would be like a really cool thing to do, like a recruiting film montage. Hey, here's Paris Johnson and his family as they put his tree into the ground and, standing there with the tree. And they do like a big, this is a cool thing that we do. Cause, most schools, like if you're an All-American, you get like a plaque or something, but getting a tree cause the tree's cool cause it's right outside the stadium. It's there forever. So like, when you walk through it, there's guys from 1920 that, obviously long dead.
Hold on. Let me just say, if for people that have not walked through the Buckeye Grove, it really is, it's just amazing. Cause like you said, you're seeing guys from, Chick Harley or people there. And the fact, Kirk, that you're memorialized along with those guys that have been there for 70, 80, 90 years or something. But I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but I cannot believe there's not a ceremony. I had envisioned like the NFL Hall of Fame thing where you have jackets and like a podium and you're up there talking and they bring the tree out. And I mean, there's not that. I mean, how many All-Americans do you have a year? I mean, like a lot of years you don't have any All-Americans.
Yeah. We've been on a run recently, but normally, see, this is interesting. So, Brandon, I appreciate you doing this research. It says that Nick was a first team All American and first team All Big Ten selection in '06. And well, I mean, I hope it said '05 because in '06 he was playing in the league. He was a rookie in the NFL. That was the year that was the year we lost to Florida. We didn't have Nick. If we'd had Nick, we probably would have beat Florida. But I think that here's the thing. I know that Nick wasn't an All American. He should have been an All American, but he wasn't. Because I remember how disappointed he was that he wasn't going to get a tree. Because we all wanted the trees, and he was disappointed. And again, like, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme. No, Nick lives in New York and had a great career and whatever. But like, I remember he was bummed out he wasn't going to get a tree, and now he has a tree. But like, so again, like, if you're an All American, you immediately know that you're getting a tree. And I just remember, because I get it. I mean, we were in the locker room together, like we're boys. So I don't know. Again, I know this is kind of turned into whatever, but yeah, there's no ceremony. And Troy, this is interesting. So this is why I love doing this live. So Troy, I appreciate this story. He said he got to saw Steve Tovar's quote tree dedication prior to his spring game. It was very informal. Coach Cooper said a few words, and the players were dressed in their uniforms. Well, we didn't do anything like that. So I mean, I think that might have just gone by the wayside, which is fine. Like, again, I don't, it's not, I don't need any ceremonies or whatever, but I thought it was kind of funny. And like I said, I love Nick, and Nick should have been an All-American. I always joked, I was like, hey, I'll trade you my tree for your first round contract. And he'd laugh, and, but it is what it is. But I think that's something that'd be cool if they would do some sort of ceremony. Cause I think it'd be a really cool thing to show recruits. Cause I'd be like, hey, here's Paris Johnson and his mom and his sister, and they're putting the tree in the ground. And here's Ryan Day, give him a hug and whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that when you talk about the traditions of Ohio State, when you talk about Skull Session and the band and dotting the I and Script Ohio and all this stuff, I mean, to me, getting a tree is like right up there with all those great traditions. I mean, it's the ultimate honor, the ultimate, perpetual. You're there for all humanity. Yeah, Ohio State. I know you listen to these podcasts. Okay, Nevada, take notes from Nevada. This is Nevada's note for the day. Let's change up the way that they do that, and let's make a ceremony out of it. Let's make a ceremony. I mean, it's not that hard. And you say you have 2 or 3 a year. That's just great. Social media for you. It's great publicity for you. It's great things for the recruits. And everything about it is positive. And it's a positive association. Let's get back to, or let's start doing a formal tree dedication ceremony. And for Kirk Barton, for Buckeye Scoop members, we should have like a special day where we all come out to the tree and we huddle around the tree and we bring Kirk Barton out there and we present him with the tree as if it was doing it for the first time. And I think I'm gonna have to do that next time I'm coming into town. I'm gonna tell you we're all gonna meet at his tree before the game, and Kirk's gonna say a few words and dedicate
and
the
then
tree.
and then you're gonna dump a vat of poison on it and watch it melt to the
No,
ground. It'll
we're
be
not going to do
great.
that. I'm telling you, going through Buckeye Grove, man, it was, like I said, it was so cool just looking at the names. It's just like a trip through history. All these
Oh.
great players that you grew up watching and seeing and rooting for, and like I said, it just, when you see 1923 or 1917 or something, it just gives you the sense of the history of Ohio State football, and it's pretty jaw dropping. And for those of you who don't know, which I'm not sure which end it's at, the where the students at that side of the field, at that end of the stadium out there, you walk out that back way. That's where the Grove is. If anybody's wondering where it is, that's the side it's on. And it's real fun to take a little. When you're at the stadium, just go walk through the Grove, and check it out. Take a picture of Barton's tree and post it on Buckeye Grove.
Yeah, like if you guys know where Ohio State runs out of the tunnel, where they run, they cross the field. It's literally where the visiting locker room is. The visitors that come out the opposite side. If you walk where the visiting locker room is,
where Joe Paterno was running, pretend Joe Paterno was running when he had diarrhea that time, and he was running in that direction right there. He was running to the Grove to go to the bathroom. That's where he was running to.
Yes, exactly. That was an '06. I'll never forget that, because I was like, I don't know what was going on. But yeah, it is cool. And if you guys haven't walked through it, it is neat, because there's players that you'll forget, or guys that you'll be like, well, I didn't know he was an All-American or whatever. But it was really cool. But yeah, it's interesting that they list Nick as an All-American, because Nick didn't know he was an All-American. Nick didn't even know he had a tree. And again, like
which team? Which team?
I have no clue. I mean, it said, it said that.
This has got to be this has got to be listed online. Like we should be able to like Google 2005
Dude,
AP All American team or
I'm
2005
just,
UP.
telling you, if Nick Mangold didn't know that he had a tree, that means he wasn't an All American. And again, and I love Nick, and Nick should have been an All American, but for
Oh
whatever
yeah,
reason, the media was obsessed with Greg Esslinger. So it's like when, the media sometimes they get enamored with certain players in preseason, and they just kind of ride the tidal wave of momentum into award season. And even when they don't have good years, they get, that they get that kind of whatever, because line's hard to evaluate. So you're not looking at numbers, you're not looking at stats, you're looking at, well, he was good preseason, the team did good, because when you're an All-American on the O line, your team has to be good generally, unless you're just dominating every, whatever. Like you have to be on a good team, you have to have a good rushing game. There's a certain stuff that people look at when you're a guy that, because I wasn't on any preseason All-American team's first team. I was on a bunch of second teams, but you got to beat some guys out. And, we were undefeated, up until the Illinois game, ran the ball really well. So it helps to get the nod, but it was interesting. I'm telling you, like, I appreciate you digging right now. Brandon, he's digging for the team. But yeah, Esslinger was like unanimous consensus All-American. I mean, he made every team. And he wasn't that good. He was a little guy. They ran that Denver Broncos zone running scheme, and they ran for 80 million yards. Like, Lawrence Maroney just killed us that year. And the year before, they had Barber and Maroney. So they had like these two NFL, top flight running backs. So, but yeah, well, this has been a great episode. In terms of some of the NFL stuff, we'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. Nevada, what's Marvin's ceiling? How high can he go in the NFL draft after this season?
I mentioned before top five. I really think, and again, I know as Ohio State fans, we tend to overvalue our Ohio State players, but I don't think top five is crazy for him at all. I mean, I think, it'd be tough for a wide receiver to go, you know, much higher, than that. But, I think, I really think that's where he's going to be. I think he's a guy that's as close to can't miss as you'd ever want in a wide receiver. He can do it all. And in the NFL, where wide receivers are so coveted and such a high value position, I think some NFL team's going to get really lucky and be really happy they got Marvin Harrison.
Is he the first non-quarterback drafted? Because that's the thing about that one mock draft is it had, it's funny because it had the Arizona Cardinals having ESPN's first mock draft for 2024, had the Arizona Cardinals picking 1 and 2 because they acquired the first round pick from the Houston Texans, which they had as the second pick. So they picked Caleb Williams and then Marvin, which is the only way that I can see him going top 2. But if I'm Arizona, I'm sure that they'd trade that pick because someone's going to want the kid Drake May from Carolina. Because when you have two top franchise type quarterbacks at the top of the draft, like, that it's going to go quarterback probably 1, 2, maybe even 3 if Quinn has a big year. Quinn years at Texas. Is he the first non-quarterback drafted?
I say yes. I say he's the top non-quarterback taken in the draft. And as you mentioned, yeah, it's hard to imagine any scenario where Caleb Williams and Drake May don't go 1, 2, and in whatever particular order, because those guys are terrific, NFL ready type of prospects. But I think Marvin's the first non-quarterback selected in the draft for sure.
And then there's always like some quarterback that just surges, like AR-15 Anthony Richardson did this year, surged up to 3. A guy that, I mean, he had an okay career at Florida, wasn't great, wasn't some dominator, wasn't, I think, what a lot of people cracked up to, but, get into combine season, he runs a 4.3, he's 6'5", 240, humongous arm. And these NFL GMs know that if they don't have a quarterback, they're going to end up getting fired like sooner than later, because if you don't have a quarterback, you have no chance in the National Football League. So that's why, like, I can't see Marvin going higher than probably 3 because it's just so quarterback heavy right now. It's a good show. Well, go ahead. What you got?
Dare I say Kyle McCord? Kyle McCord, NFL draft eligible. Big year, surges into the top 5.
Hey, again, it happened with Dwayne Haskins. I mean, Haskins came in and we're like, we got Haskins for 3 years and we had him for 1 year. So, when you're throwing to guys that are monsters, and you have Ryan Day calling the plays, and, I mean, our O-line this year is about the same as what Haskins had to deal with in 18. I mean, we got some high level guys like Donnie Jackson, and we got some guys that we got to protect a little bit. But, I mean, Dwayne threw for 5,000 yards behind that line, and it was really good. I mean, that was Urban's last year, but I mean, that was the best throw year that we've ever had. 50 touchdowns for Dwayne Haskins. So, and honestly, the receivers were good. I mean, it was Terry McLaurin, it was Johnny Dixon, Olave at the end in the Michigan game, but they weren't nearly as talented as the guys we have now. Or the guys we've had the last 3 years with Wilson, Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, now Marvin and Emeka. So it'll be interesting to see what Kyle does, because again, these guys all want to go pro, man. I mean, these guys are all competitive. Quinn Ewers is going to go pro after this year, and I'm sure Kyle McCord wants to be in the same draft class and beat him out.
Well, Julian Fleming was the number one wide receiver coming out of high school, I believe. And you said Emeka was number one coming out of his draft class, and was Innis the number one wide receiver last year? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, you've got a lot, just an absurd amount of talent. When you're low ranked guy, when your throw in guy is Marvin Harrison Jr., as part of your wide receiving core, then these quarterbacks have, I dare say, it's the most highly regarded wide receiving core that we've ever had at Ohio State, and whoever gets the job, whether it be Devin Brown or whether it be Cal McCord, and watch out for my boy Lincoln down the road. They're going to be throwing to some talented wide receivers, that's for sure.
This is great, because I'm going to start calling Nick Dick Mango. So Nick Mango was on All-American team. Well, I don't think he was, because he didn't think he was, and there's nobody that knows to throw on an All-American team more than the player.
No, but which one was it?
Tell us which one, because someone can edit a Wikipedia document to say that I was the first person on the moon, and that doesn't mean I was the first person on the moon. So, but I don't know. Like I said, I think he should have been an All-American. I think he got hosed. I remember he was sad he got hosed, and I also know that he was shocked that he had a tree, because he didn't know he had a tree, because he didn't think he got a tree, because he wasn't an All-American, and he should have been an All-American. It was a crime against humanity that Dick Mango is not an All-American. But hey, that's sometimes there's guys that are fantastic players that don't get the love that they deserve in college, and then they go make a fortune in the NFL, and it makes them sleep just as easy. So, well, Nevada, you gonna wrap this thing up? You got anything else to go?
No, just again, going back to the sad news about Cornell Tate. Prayers to the Tate family, and just tough story, and just hope everybody rallies around him and gives him support and love and prayers, and put things in perspective. The things that we worry about on a day-to-day basis really aren't that important, relative to other things.
Yeah, it's an absolute tragedy, and Carnell's one of the nicest kids you could ever meet, and it's just sad that this is a tragedy he's gonna have to deal with his mother succumbing to some senseless violence. So I'm thinking about you, Carnell, dude. I know you're not gonna watch the show, but you're a great kid, bright future, and just do what you can, man. There's nothing I can really say, but it's tough. We'll wrap this thing up. We appreciate you guys being a part of this tonight. Hit that like button on the way out. Click subscribe. We're almost at 20,000 subscribers, so we appreciate you guys. Leave a comment. Who's the best wide receiver in Ohio State history? I want to know. You guys, is it Marvin? Is it Chris Carter? Is it Garrett Wilson? A lot of great candidates. That field's got a lot more crowded. People have said David Boston, Michael Jenkins. It's hard. And I also want to know, what's your criteria? Do you judge NFL? Does that go into the equation, or is it just college football? So, give me those comments. Appreciate you guys as always. Thank you so much for being a part of the Scoop family. If you love this podcast, you should join BuckeyeScoop.com, because the season's about to start. We're about to be cranking up some of it. So we appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.